The Last of Us Part 2 drops to $40 on PSN after Prime Day. Now, when you read into this, the headline's a little misleading. It will be on sale for $40. I don't think Sony is basically saying it's now $40 for the rest of its life. But regardless, if you go to the September charts, Ghost Tsushima is still on here. Now, Ghost came out after Last of Us 2, but not that much farther. And Last of Us 2 is long gone on this list. And so it does get me thinking, as much as I am progressive, as much as I love seeing this in terms of more women represented, I don't want to not see men represented, but I do think it's nice that there's a balance. As much as I like the fact that gamers are given choices, as much as I like the fact that we're seeing more non-binary and trans characters in games. But here's my question when you look at the sales, though, because there's the obnoxious, war cry of these people, which is, get woke, go broke. But end of the day, the question is, let's for a moment presume that's the case. Let's assume for a moment that Naughty Dog is sitting there looking at the sales of The Last of Us, and let's assume for a moment that it did not meet expectations. At that point, what do you do if you're Scott Rhodey? What do you do if you're Jim Ryan? What do you do if you're Neil Druckmann? Do you sit back and go, well, it was fun while it lasted, fellas, but marketing and sales have come to us with irrefutable data that says, as much as we as a company believe in diversity and all this stuff, when we cross that line too much, we alienate. As much as we don't agree with the people we're alienating, they are customers, and we maybe want to take steps towards diversity and steps towards inclusivity, but maybe we're going too fast, right? It's just like what I told my kid the other day. She really was like, I guess Biden's fine, but I really wanted Bernie. And I said, yeah, I really wanted Bernie too. And I wanted Warren. And she says, well, why are you voting for Biden? I said, well, because most people are not as progressive as we are. Most people, it's slow. When I was my kid's age, gay marriage wasn't even, what are you kidding? The only thing that we talked about that had to do with gay people was making fun of them and using gay slurs. That's how it was in the 70s. And now the majority of Americans support gay marriage. Now the majority of Americans support legalizing marijuana. But it took 40 years to and it took a lot of fucking, fighting and picketing and rioting and yelling and screaming. But eventually the line got moved. And I just wonder if you're Naughty Dog or if you're one of these more progressive developers, on one hand, you don't want to be quiet because that's how progress gets made. But you're making $180 million plus rolls of the dice here. And I don't know, as one of the most progressive guys I guarantee you'll ever meet, I don't know what I would do if I was sitting in Jim Ryan's chair and Neil Druckmann and crew came to me and said, okay, Last of Us Part 3, and it's just as progressive as Last of Us Part 2. I would be like, well, morally, karmically, ethically, of course I agree with all those things. But at the same time, I know we're going to leave 40% of ducats on the table because we live in a world where people aren't where we are at the moment, right? I don't know what I'd do. Samson says The Last of Us 2 had the first gay couple in AAA games. Good for them. I agree. I thought it was great. And even though I didn't play it, at first I heard Abby was a trans character. I guess she's not the trans character. I love there's a fucking trans character in that game. I'm not opposed. Not only am I not opposed, I'm a fan of all that stuff. But I'm just saying that, so Samson says you mean be a sellout. No, I don't mean be a sellout. I mean, what do you put first, right? It's not unlike movie studios, right? If a movie studio is going to greenlight a $300 million movie with The Rock, it ain't going to be about anything other than the bad guys get their asses kicked, the good guys win, and there's lots of booms and explosion in between the popcorn munching. And maybe that's what games should do. Maybe games should just be like, look, Sony, they're not going to sell out, but it's like, look, guys, you can't spend that money. Just like they went to Spielberg. Spielberg made Schindler's List. Spielberg didn't get a Jurassic Park budget to make Schindler's List. They said, yeah, do whatever you want. You're fucking Steven Spielberg. But look, you can't spend $180 million. He's like, yeah, I get it. No problem. So he went off and made a classic with the money he had. So if Neil Druckmann and company come to Sony next time and say, we have this story that's very progressive, it's very cool, and everybody loves it, and I would probably love it too. And Sony, I think they wouldn't sell out if they said, cool, but that's not for our $180 million line. You guys got to make that for $25 million. I think that is not selling out. That's just smart business. Samson says the game didn't flop. I didn't say it flopped, but it's definitely not on the charts anymore. It's definitely selling for $40 right now. It's definitely not the hit The Last of Us 1 was. So did it flop? Probably not. Did it underperform? I think absolutely. Kingdom says, Jaffe, I feel like most people end up thinking the racial or gender diversity is forced. How often do you think they inject these characters to fit a quota? Well, Kingdom, I mean, I've talked about this before. I think the more you are not living a real life where these kinds of people, Black people, Hispanic people, Latina people, Jews, Asians, trans, gays, the more you live a life where those people are not in your social circle, the more it's going to feel forced because you're like, this is weird. This is different. This doesn't feel natural. But the more you live around a diverse group of people, which is becoming more American, certainly in bigger cities, in medium-sized cities, the more it doesn't feel forced. So I don't think it's really as forced as you think. I'm not saying that every time a game maker or a movie maker makes a decision, there isn't consciousness about it being valuable to some people to be diverse. But I also think that most people who make creative art don't swim in the waters of being, I only go to school or I only work with people who are Christian and white. And so I think the more you're inclined to think it's forced, it's probably an indicator that you are more surrounded by people who look and sound just like you.